That's Trinity, by the way.
Who is your dog named after?
The mountains up in Northern California, the Trinity Alps.
And why is that?
Because we started naming all of our pets after mountains when we lived up in Northern California. So we had Shasta, our kitty is Cascade, and this dog is Trinity.
Well, there you go. Where are you now? What part of the world are you in now?
Sacramento, California.
Okay. So, where do you typically run up there?
Mostly along the American River Bike Trail if we just need to get out from the house, and then we have a cabin up near South Lake Tahoe. So we go up there pretty much every weekend and just play in the mountains.
I've been there. I've been to Tahoe the last couple of years because Spartan had their thing there, their world championship. But it's not this year. They moved it to Abu Dhabi, which may or may not happen. And there's another championship there in September, but I don't think I'm gonna make it. But every time I visit out west, I think I'd really like to live here for the running, but I don't think I want to live anywhere it's cold again. So I've said to my wife that when the kids get older, maybe I'll just like grab an RV a couple times a year and go run.
That'd be kind of nice.
Because she doesn't want to live there either. But
in California?
She's from San Francisco, and she would probably move there if we wanted to. Like if I said, honey, let's go there, but that's too expensive. Right. But she doesn't want to live. She doesn't want to live in the mountains. It's not really her vibe.
Yeah.
She's more of a city gal.
I am originally from Canada, so I don't want to be back in the cold. So Sacramento's perfect. We can have the heat and be warm most of the year, and if we want to see snow, we can just drive up the mountains and get out of it before it gets too old.
Do you have dual citizenship?
Yes, I do.
Do you race as an American?
For the championship races I've done, I raced as a Canadian.
Okay.
So I'm stuck doing that and now I could switch if I wanted to. If I were at the international level,
right,
I could switch because I haven't raced an international race in 3 years. So, but we'll see.
So
I kind of like running for Canada.
Because why?
Just because that's where I was born and raised. So it just always feels like that's what I am.
And what international races have you participated in?
I've done a couple of championship 50Ks and 50 milers. So I did world championship trail race a few years ago, and the world championship 50K in Qatar. What else? Oh, in Portugal. And then a couple other.
How do they select these teams?
It depends. The US is a little tighter than Canada used to be. And it was, you had to do certain races to qualify, and you'd be chosen from the people who did those certain races. For a number of years, Canada had so few people who would qualify that they would just look at your resume. And I was actually invited to race for Canada because I had, I had the fastest 50-mile times of any Canadian women. So they were calling me and saying, can you race for us? So that's how I got into it. And then sort of once you're in. But right. Now there's a lot more fast women in Canada, so it's a little tougher, and they have the qualifying races now as well.
When did you start running sort of like remotely professionally or like hard, I guess?
Long time ago. I, um, Alan and I started doing adventure races in 2000, seriously. And then in about 2003, we were sponsored at the time by Sunsweet Growers, and we talked to the sponsor and said, we could get you better coverage if we put out 6 or 7 ultra runners rather than one adventure racing team.
Right.
So we switched and pulled together a team of ultra runners, and so the serious racing started in about 2003. And then 2005, I did Western States the first time, and that sort of was the jumping board to get things really moving.
Do you know my buddy Joe DeSena?
I know that name. I'm not sure I know him personally.
He's founded Spartan Race, and he got started in adventure racing. So
that's why I know the name.
Right. So I know these worlds are small. So some people are like, oh yeah, of course. And they know him really well. Hang on. My wife just texted me. We've got some school issues going on with the boy. So, I'll just text us back really quickly. So when you talk to those people, you got a team of just people that you kind of liked?
Pretty much, yeah. It was just friends. We were all pretty solid ultra runners and said, hey, we've got this group of friends, and we tend to travel a lot, so the name would get out far, and Sunsweet thought it was a great idea. So
do you think being a couple helped a lot with that?
I think being a couple has helped a lot with a lot of our name getting out, because right. It's always a little different to see 2 people who run strong together. There's not a whole lot of couples that do that. So
right.
Yes, I think that was a big part of it.
How did you do at Western States that first year? Did I ask you that?
You did not ask me that. I was second.
That's not horrible.
No, I was pretty happy with Western States. I was second 3 times and then third the 4th time.
And then you said, enough is enough. I'm done with this nonsense.
And then my knee said enough is enough, and I had to have knee surgery, and that put me out for a couple of years.
Yeah, I started running when the whatever that Born to Run running boom happened. 10, 11, 12, whatever that time was. It's also when I got into OCR, but I fell in love with running more so than most people who do obstacle races. So, I was reading all the books and watching all the documentaries and like really getting into it, and had Western States on that bucket list. And then it went away for me, and I'm like, well, I don't really care if I ever do that. But then I just watched Unbreakable again for the first time in many, many years. And I'm like, I think I should do that race sometime.
It's kind of lost something for me now. I think it got too big too fast.
Right.
And now it seems like it's a little overhyped. I'd love to do it again, but I'm not going to go out of my way to do it. I think there's just so many good races out there that it doesn't hold that much for me.
Well, I'm not as connected to trail and ultra as I am OCR world, but I have sort of paid attention. And I've talked to Eric a decent amount, Eric Schranz, Ultra Runner podcast guy. And I had no idea until recently that for all its allure, they don't give any money to the racers, which was surprising to me. And I understand that's the culture of ultra, right? Or like nobody gets money for Laz's races, but that makes sense, right? It's the right. Magic and myth of Laz. And we could talk about, I know you've done Barkley, so we can talk about that. But where do you sit with that? Do you think a race that gets enough attention and certainly sponsor money should be like, hey, let's throw the racers a bone?
I'm kind of old school on the whole ultra running thing. I don't know that money has done that much good for ultra running. There's a few races out there that have put up some really big prize money for ultra running. And I don't see that that's helped a whole lot. You know, Western states, regardless of how big it gets and the fact that it has no money, just keeps getting bigger. And they have, you know, they get 10,000 people applying for 400 spots. So,
Right.
I mean, to me, there's no reason for them to offer money. And I don't know. Like I said, I'm a little old school. I don't know that money is something that needs to be thrown at most of the people who are into ultra running.
Well, thrown at is one thing. Top 3 men and women is not horrible thing to, like, you know what I mean? Especially
No,
so if you're at the elite level and you're able to, you know, get Hoka to throw you a few bucks besides just some free shoes, and you really want to grow the sport, as it were, you don't think that giving people an opportunity to train full time and not have to work in shoe stores all the time is like a bad thing?
I don't know if I'm the person to ask this because, I mean, for me, running, adventure racing, it's always been a hobby. I have a full-time job. I'm a scientist. I've never considered it something that I would live off of. So I don't know that I see that side of it in quite that way. I don't know. I it's a little different way of looking at it. I guess I've always considered running a hobby.
And that's all it
And
ever should be.
yeah. And if you can do it well, then go and do it well. And the people who do it really well are finding a way to make it a living. But to me, it's not ever going to be a living. And I just don't see that it's something that I would necessarily be interested in. I've never gone to a race because there's money. Never. And I never will. And people have always asked me, why don't you go and run Rabbit Run, or, you know, some of these ones that have big prize money? I'm just not interested. That's not what is part of me. I will look for races that look fun and that look like they're in really cool spots. And those are the ones I'll do. And, you know, now we've kind of gotten hooked into Laz's races. So Alan and I have both done Barkley several times, and there's nothing for that. You can go out and kill yourself for 3 days, and your prize is you don't have to go back out in the woods.
So if my memory serves, like, have you done fun runs or more at Barkley?
I have done 2 fun runs and then failed horribly 2 other times.
And so for people who aren't as educated, the fun run for Laz is 3 laps of the 5 required to actually finish. It doesn't. You're still a DNF but we call it the fun run. So, and how many women besides you have done that?
I think in like 1999, 2000 time period, there were 2 women who got fun runs. And then it was 12 years, and I got my first fun run in 2012 and my second one in 2013, and no woman has done one since.
And how well has Alan done?
He has 5 fun runs.
Okay.
And one year he got 4 laps and started out on his 5th.
But ran out of time.
But yeah.
But he had 4 in the books that counted?
He had 4 in the books, yes.
So my experience with Barkley is, heard about it when everybody started to, I feel like, again, 11, 12, was when it's first, yeah, just as the internet grew. And then obviously the movie put it way over the top. But I finally went, I thought, well, geez, I got to go be around this thing. I had met Laz and Sandra here when they showed the movie in Atlanta, and I actually like got to give them a ride to the airport. Someone's like, they need a ride. I was like, I'll do it. Like, you know, you get a chance to hang out with Laz and Sandra, like, and I was like, listen, Barkley isn't for me. I wouldn't even want to show up and try to run one loop because I know for some people it's like their whole life, and that's not my goal. So why would I take that spot away? Like, well, you should come and like do one of our other races. So I did Race for the Ages, and I'm glad I did that. But 2 years ago now, you know how the years run together. I went to just watch Barkley, and as a spectator, which they don't really allow anyway, like he let me go as media. But how I explain it to people is that, you know, when you're home and you're reading all the tweets, it's really exciting. Like you see, like, oh, this person came in for the lap, and like you're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and you're refreshing, and it's very exciting. When you're at Frozen Head State Park and you're just sitting in the rain next to the guy that's tweeting his results, it's not nearly as exciting. So I would say it's not wise to go. First of all, you're not supposed to anyway, but if I was like crewing for a friend, I could see it being great. But just sitting there in the rain for 3 days was not great. I'm glad I did it. I can say I was at least there once. But I did say to Laz, I said, you know, I understand that Frozen Head has like its own weather system, but it definitely had that sort of classy, sort of classic, sort of drizzling to pissing rain the entire time we were there. And I said, wow, it really is like this. And he's like, yeah, he said, and the years that it's not is usually the year we have a finisher or two. And like, that can be the difference of something being impossible to slightly doable is you're not getting rained on the entire time. Have you seen all seasons of weather there?
Oh, yes. Yeah. The first year that I went was 2012, and it was probably one of the warmest years that there was. There was a small thunderstorm that came through on like the middle of day 2. And other than that, it was just nice and pleasant the entire time. And there were, I think, 3 finishers and like 8 fun runners. So it was a huge finish, which of course meant the next year was going to be horribly harder.
Right.
And then the next year was not bad. It was a little more drizzly, but you know, a few hours at a time, generally pretty decent weather. And again, there were a couple of finishers, and I think Alan and I might have been the only fun runners. There might have been one other. And then the following 2 years were that horrible, miserable weather you're talking about, where it's drizzling the entire time up at Garden Spot, which is up high in the mountain area. It was a blizzard with like 40-mile-an-hour winds and fog so thick you couldn't see your hand.
Right.
And, you know, that's what you run into. And it's crazy, crazy weather. And it'll be, you know, it can be really nice down in the campsite and blizzards up on the mountains. So you never know what you're going to get.
Why does he have to make it harder? Like, dude, just like we had a nice weather year, just keep it the same-ish. You know what I mean?
It's just what he does. And some years he doesn't. He'll send out messages for months in advance saying how much more difficult he's made it, and he's added all these other hills and he's changed things around, and you get out there and it's exactly the same course. So it's just a total mental game for him. And his goal is to put it sort of just at the edge of somebody's ability. And the last few years, it's been a little beyond that edge. So we'll see. He needs a perfect weather year to get someone out there again.
So do you want to go back?
That's a tough question for me at this point. I think it's a little out of my reach for a number of reasons. It's not something that I have the ability to train for. The years that I was able to do the fun runs were when we were living up in Northern California. So we could literally go out our door and be on trails and climbing hills and doing all those kinds of things. Now in order to get a decent training day, it means, 2 hours of driving to go out. So I can't go out after work. My after work run is a flat bike trail. So that makes it more difficult to get the training in. And besides that, I'm 56. It's not that easy to get that level of training in. So, there's a lot going on for me that I'm not.
Right. I mean, it gives me a lot of hope though, because I'm 48 and I didn't start until I was 40. Like when I started running, I was 40 and it was amazing. And I was like, oh my God, again, all the reasons people love running. But when I look at pictures from 2012, which was 8 years ago, I go, man, I look thin. Like, can I be that thin again? Like, is that possible? Like, cause at the time I just gone from, I always say like just sort of average softball playing dad, like, a couple extra pounds, and I lost it. And now it's all diet, right? It doesn't matter. I can run 35 miles a week, 40 miles a week, which for me is like a pretty good week. And like, I don't lose a pound unless I really change what I eat. And I already eat pretty good. You know what I mean? So you're, dare I say, fit as fuck at 56. And so I know that it's possible for me to do it. And I know people run until they're 80, and beyond. So, but it's a good reminder. When you and Alan race, is it ever, we're going to stick together, or is it always just go run, I'll see you later?
It's often we'll stick together, especially these days. It used to be, I'll see you at the finish line. But now we've done a number of races where we just went in saying we're going to stick together. So for Barkley, every time we've gone, at least the first 2 laps, we stuck together.
Right. Well, Barkley is a different thing. It makes sense to stick together. But
yes.
I just mean a regular 50K or whatever, 100 mile or whatever.
Oh, 50Ks, no. I'm too competitive on those.
You leave them in the dust?
The longer ones, like Plain 100, we've done a couple of times, and we stuck together for that. For Vol State last year, we went in saying we're going to get through this as a team, and we stuck together, and it's been really good. And I think our adventure racing background went a long way to getting us to a point where we can do that kind of thing together.
Right.
So, for Vol State, Alan does really well at night. He can go without sleep for days. And I do really well in the heat. So for something like Vol State, I think we made pretty much the perfect team, because, during the hot days, I could carry a little extra water so that he'd have a bit extra that, lightened him up a little bit. If he started suffering from the heat, I could recognize it pretty quickly and make sure he got the electrolytes he needed and stop in the shade and things like that. And then at night, when I started hallucinating and wandering into the highway, he would grab me and keep me from being killed. So kind of worked out well as a team.
Right. Did he win that race or set the record or something?
He won it in the first year he did it, I think was 2013. And he won it and was the first person to do it in under 5 days. And now since then, it's gone under 4 days.
Wow.
So it's, the people are just amazing who are going out there. And then last year when we ran it together, that was his fastest year. And that was me setting the record for women.
Yeah, see, that one I could maybe see doing, like, okay, it's a lot of suffering, but it's the nav that just like, I know I don't have that in me for Barkley. You know what I mean? It's just not really, it doesn't appeal to me. I don't really see why people do it. It's just sort of this mental game that I don't want to play, but you're a scientist, so you probably enjoy that. You probably enjoy solving the puzzle, right?
Yeah. And that's, if you look at a lot of the people who have done well at Barkley, they're scientists and engineers.
Right.
There's a couple that have not been, but for the most part, they're very highly educated scientists and engineers who enjoy doing that kind of thinking and puzzling things out. And
right. I think what I've learned in the last, 8 years is, you know, whatever you call a sufferfest, it's like just choose your thing, right? Because there are also people in my world that do the thing where they ruck, they just kind of carry heavy weight and go a really long way, and like put me to sleep, man. Like I don't see anything in that, but they find the same camaraderie, overcoming adversity that you might find in Barkley or that I might find in something else. And so
Right.
it's like choose your, you know what I mean? There are different levels of sort of sufferfest, as it were. It's interesting talking about that because, you know, I was actually going to do Boston this year and that got canceled. And so now I'm going to pick a fall ultra, and I'm talking to a friend, and, you know, we're having this whole conversation about whether we want to do it together. I know that just, you know, flat out, he's younger and faster than me. But I'm probably going to be tougher, as it were. And so we're sort of having that conversation because I haven't done it in a while, where it's like, okay, at what point do we say every man for himself, right? Like, is it do or die no matter what? I'll stick with you, because I don't think I want to say that, because you might give up super early and I don't want to walk the last 30, you know what I
Right.
mean? So I'm trying to find that balance of like, let's just have fun together. We know we're not going to win. Like that's not in anybody's wheelhouse. But let's decide where, because I know that there's a lot to be said for going with somebody.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard decision to make. And it's, you know, when someone starts to suffer and you've made a commitment to stay together, it's hard to pull away. And, you know, the times that I've done stuff with Alan and we had made a commitment, like for Barkley, I think the third year that I went out there, I just totally blew it going out on the second lap. I didn't have enough clothes for shitty weather. And we got to Garden Spot, and that was the year that it was a blizzard, and, you know, we couldn't see the trail because the snow was coming down so fast, and I didn't have enough clothing, and he wasn't going to leave me. He was giving me his extra jackets and all this, and I finally had to say, look, I'm going down Quitters Road. Take your shit, go and do your thing. This is on me. I blew it.
Right.
I'm out of here. So sometimes it takes the person who's suffering to say, I'm cutting the cord from you, go.
Right.
Because it's really hard for the person who's still strong to say, ditching you, bye.
Right. Hope you don't die out here.
Yeah.
Laz is very proud that they've never had to actually get the helicopter to extract anybody. He's very proud of that stat.
A big thing. And, you know, there have been some people who have been in some bad shape coming out of those mountains. I think it was the second year I went, and I don't recall who it was. Somebody fell and broke their kneecap.
Oof.
And self-extracted. And it's like, that's tough to do that.
Right.
So yeah, he's had it good. He's been able to keep the field to people who are actually capable and willing to self-extract in pretty severe situations. So it's a testament to him and the way he chooses the runners that go in.
So how did you find our little adventure, the Ultravirus race, the first one, which was April, I guess? Was it April?
April.
Or May? Right.
How did we find that it was going on?
Yeah.
I think it was Eric Schranz had posted something.
Right.
And we saw that and thought, hey, this is a good way to motivate, because we're not going to go out and run 50 or 60 miles just to go and run 50 or 60 miles.
Right.
So we figured that was something that would give us the motivation and looked like fun.
Well, I think I messaged this to you, but the birth of it was actually watching the
backyard,
the virtual backyard, which I thought was incredibly boring to watch. And I thought, well, a more fun way to do this, rather than watching a bunch of people on treadmills, was to like do this looped version, which I know people can wrap their brain around. And I thought, you know, we're an obstacle racing media company. We'll get some OCR audience, but we'll definitely attract ultra people who are looking for a challenge. I thought for sure. and I got Wardian to sign up almost right away. You signed up. I was thrilled. And other than that, we like did not make a dent at all. And I was very disappointed. So I want to ask you if you could articulate, because the second time around we still weren't very lucky getting ultra or trail people. Why would they not? Like, what do you think is the difference in getting people to sign up for that?
To be honest, I don't know. I have not figured out what motivates ultra runners sometimes, because
let me say this, because I know that the whole like, well, I'm just not going to do anything virtual because that's not me. Like, fine, like I get that, but people are doing things. So
right, there's 19,000 people signed up for Laz's Run Across Tennessee, which has nothing. All you do is type in your miles every afternoon. There's
and nobody's checking it anyway.
No. So, why are there 19,000 people doing that? Why were there 2,000 or 3,000 people that did the Backyard Ultra, but none of them are coming over for yours? And I don't know. I can't answer that. You got me.
So how did you, I want to know how you approached the first one as someone who's done this a really long time, but certainly this is a different sort of thing to do, right? You can't prepare in the way that you normally would, I guess. How did you approach it the first time?
Actually prepared pretty much the same as for any other ultra. Just assumed, because in fact, we have a race here that I've won the last several years, which is a 5-mile loop around our bike trails. And we approached it the same as we do that one. We had our little thing set up here in the house and just said, okay, well, here's our aid station. We've got a little cooler with drinks. We've got a little cooler with food and sandwiches and whatever else might look good during the day. And we'll just go and do our 5-mile loops and carry on. So it really was not that different from doing the Jed Smith race that we did just in February. Same kind of thing. 5-mile loop, grab what you need, go back out. The only difference was having to mess around with taking pictures of your watch and all that stuff, which, looking back at the pictures that I emailed, it's like, I don't know how he's going to see anything off of that mess.
Did you, the competitive part of you last time around, how much were you paying attention to the leaderboard last time?
I did not look at it at all on either of them. I had no idea until the first time, until you asked me who this Kristen Gray was. Had no idea what was going on. It's right. Just, this is my thing. I know what I need to do. I know what I'm ready for here. And same, I didn't know that Devin was even in it until I heard you guys talking about her one time when I came in. It's like, what?
Well, but I thought you're super competitive.
Right now, because my focus is on Heart of the South, which is in 2 weeks, everything I'm doing is just
leading
training.
Up to that. Where is that?
So it's in Tennessee. It's across Tennessee.
It's across Tennessee.
Yeah. It's a little different than Vol State. It's a couple 100 miles south. So it starts in Memphis and just sort of wiggles along the border
right.
of Tennessee, Alabama, and finishes in Georgia, just below Chattanooga.
Okay. And it's 100% happening. Like it's, cause I know a lot of people.
It came actually last night, 100% happening. So got my flights, got my hotel, ready to go.
How many people do that race?
He was allowing, I think, 120, but because of the whole distancing and the bus company can only fill halfway and the hotels have to be one person per room, he had to cut it down to 63, I think. So, and right now it's full at 63.
Who puts it on?
It's Laz.
I was gonna say, because it's called the last annual, which is, I know what they call, what they
Vol
always
State.
call. So wait, is this just like he's just doing it as an alternative this year?
Well, kind of, yes. What happened last year was when he put up volunteer state for registration on Ultra Sign Up, it was supposed to cap at 120. And something with the Ultra Sign Up just allowed people to keep registering.
Uh-huh.
And he wasn't paying attention to it right away. And suddenly when he looked at the registrations, there were 200 and some odd people registered. And he felt so bad about that, about having to say, oh, sorry, you got the confirmation that you're registered, but no, I can only take 120. He said, here's an option. I can put together a race if people want to switch to this other one. So in like the course of a week or so, he put together a new course and put it into June, and then enough people flipped to the new course that he's able to have them both.
Got it. Okay. Yep. There's a photo of Laz right there. And then what else do you have on the calendar?
We have Georgia Jewel in September. And other than that, we're just waiting to see what opens up and work around that.
Well, yeah, I'm looking at fall ultras, and I know we actually have a fair amount here in the South, because I've seen like every year that I would just kind of look at the schedule. There's a fair amount. I assume that one's sold out. Georgia Jewel should go to ultra.
Sure, I think there might be some spaces left, but I'm not 100% sure. I think when everything started shutting down, they stopped accepting registration, and then they reopened it again when they found out that they'd be able to hold it.
So what's distance on this one, on Georgia Jewel?
We're doing the 100-mile. I think there's a 50-mile and a 50K and maybe some shorter ones as well.
Registration closes Wednesday, July 1st. So let's see, can you register for this thing? Sometimes it'll say register, and then it's like, okay, you're on the wait list. Yeah, the wait list for this.
Oh.
Yeah, wait list for all of it, for all the distances. I'll find something, I'm sure, down here. So you've probably done all those, haven't you? Like, or have you done a bunch over here, like Pinhoti and Stump Jump and all those?
No, I haven't done very many over in that area at all.
Okay.
It's mostly been the Laz Tennessee races, and we did Oak Mountain in Alabama, and that's about it. Alan's done a couple over there. He's done Children of the Cane, which is one that I'd like to do, and another one, because his parents live in Alabama, so
Okay.
He's, over the years, he's done it as the obligatory go home and visit the parents and
Go do an ultra.
go do an ultra, yeah.
What about Georgia Death Race?
I have not done that. And I've heard some bad things about the race director, so probably
As have
won't.
I. But I just meant in the past if you'd done it, because I know that I mean, I know a lot of people don't like that guy. We don't have to talk about him, but I know that prior to that, a lot of people, it had become sort of, I mean, it became a Western States qualifier. So it must have been at least somewhat. I volunteered there one year and it looked ridiculously hard. But I really recommend volunteering, especially. So we were at the second to last aid station, and when you see the first group of people that had came up, you know, you're like, you want an orange, you want this, whatever, and they like grab it and they go, whatever. But 12 hours later, you get people that literally can't even answer the question. Like, would you like a Coke or water? And their face just looks at you. So you go, I'm going to walk you over to this chair for a second, and then I'm going to just hand you an orange. No, they don't have a pacer with them or anything. They're just a fucking zombie.
Yeah.
Right? And then they sort of start to come to, and they're like, oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's interesting to see some of the runners that are out on some of these races. And I've been on sort of all sides of racing. We used to put on a 50K, which is obviously not 100-mile. And I've paced some people at Western States and other races, and I've been a volunteer at aid stations in races. So I've seen it from all angles, and it's interesting to watch the people going through.
And so, you, in terms of like, you don't want to go back to Western States, but are there other races that you want to, like, I want to go back and win that thing?
I don't know. I think the races that I wanted to win, I won generally. The ones that I've not done well at, there's a physical reason I've not done well, and I don't want to put myself through that. So like Leadville, I got pulmonary edema and was carried off the mountain by my pacer. I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to do high mountain races because I know that my physiology doesn't do well.
Right.
So, something like that. Yeah, I failed badly. I was hauled off the mountain. No, I don't want to go back and try it again. So there's those kinds of things. And then, I would love to go back to Western States and win it, but I'm 56 years old. The women who are winning are early 30s, late 20s. That's a tough competition. So, I understand my limitations. I'm not a professional runner. I'm not getting out there and doing the kind of mileage and the speed that, Devin Yanko does. So I know where my competition is, and I'm willing to accept that. And I'll go and do Heart of the South and probably win that. So.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on, and thanks for doing my race a couple times.
Loved doing it. It was a lot of fun. And like I said, it was a great motivation for me. I wouldn't have gone out and run 70 miles without that hanging over my head and having the computer on every time I came in. It's a good motivator, and I'm glad you did it. And I'm glad you did it twice.
Well, thanks. I was going to stop, but people seem to want one more. So I think we're going to do one more. I honestly, I'm not sure I want to do it. Not even from the work that it takes to put together, because it's getting easier each time, obviously. But I don't know. I mean, people are asking, but then the people who did the first one, I thought I'd have 70% return rate, and it was more like 25% return rate.
Really?
I know,
that
right?
Surprises me.
You'd think it was everybody who did it plus new people, but it was about 100 of the 300 or the 400 that did it. So.
Wow. Yeah, that really surprises me. I expected it to all be the same folks.
Me too.
But I don't know. I think you're losing some because they can't do the treadmill, which I think is a scam anyways.
Well, no, I did the treadmill thinking I was going to get a lot of these people, especially in England where you couldn't leave. And with a couple weeks to go, we only had 5 people. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to keep a whole division open of treadmill.
Oh, I didn't realize you had a treadmill division.
Well, I thought people weren't signing up because they couldn't leave their house. So I thought, okay, I'll do one this time. It'll be separate scoring. It'll be separate everything. And then we had, like I said, 6 people sign up. And so I just said, listen, I'm going to give you your money back. You can stay and do the regular version, or you can not do it at all. And it's up to you. And so a couple of those people did it and a couple people quit. So.
Oh, well, that's bizarre. But again, I think the whole treadmill thing, and that was something that we talked about a lot when we did the Backyard Ultra, is having the treadmills against the
doesn't make any
people
sense.
out running. It's like, how does that make any sense at all?
Right.
Unless you've got somebody out calibrating every treadmill so they all mean the same thing, and you have someone checking to make sure that everyone's at 1% to 2% incline. Right. How is that meaningful?
I mean, it's already hard enough to keep track of a virtual race, which which is why we were going to do it separately. There was no way that was going to be like, you weren't going to, it had to be apples to apples. And sure enough, you know, we dug much deeper into the data this time. The last time we didn't do it as diligently, but the fact that we put everybody on the same playing field with Strava, people can edit data. And I will say, like, there was a person that edited data and we had to disqualify that person. So
what? How do you do that? I didn't know you could do anything in Strava.
Well, what you can do is edit the Garmin data.
Oh.
Or you can manual input. There's a lot of different ways.
Yes.
And it's disappointing.
Yeah.
Because,
well, you know, after we did the first one and we were talking about doing this one this past weekend, I was chatting with someone and they said, well, how do you know that it's the same person running every lap?
Right.
Or how do you know they're not just getting on a bike and riding slowly? And that, I guess to me, it made no sense that someone would do that. It had never even occurred to me that someone would come up with a way to cheat in a virtual run.
Well, especially like there was money on the first one. This one, it wasn't money. It was just prizes. And so you think, well, why would they do that? Do they just want to brag to their Instagram followers?
Right.
But you certainly, listen, there's 100 ways to cheat and there's always going to be cheating, but yeah, you could run a couple laps and then give your watch to your friend. Right.
Right. And you know, until this person had brought that up, it just never even entered my mind that someone would come up with that.
Well, like, the way that we looked at it, like me and my team, was a couple of things. Was, first of all, like, does it pass the eye test? Does this person look like they could have done it? Right? Like, if you look at them and their posts and nothing's about ultra running and it's just, you know, a random fitness person, like, that's sort of the first, like, okay, now let's go to previous races, right? How have they done in previous races? Now let's go to just their regular runs. Like, let's go to Strava, right? Now let's break down this data individually. And so if enough of those points did not pass, then it's like, we're not even going to ask. I don't need to ask you what happened here. It's clear you cheated and I'm going to disqualify you. So that's what happened.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It makes no sense to me that anyone would do that.
Well, you're an honest person. You also don't think about ways to, you know, rob your company. Do you? Do you wake up every day thinking about how to rob your company?
No.
Right. So it's the same thing. It would never occur to you to cheat because you're not a cheater.
That's true. That's very true. It blew me away to even hear someone say, why someone's not just handing it off to somebody else to run or putting it on their dog or what?
The dog I hadn't thought of. But I do have to get running though. So let me jump.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thanks for doing this. I'll send you a link when it's up.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
See you. Bye.